Hello everyone. Does anybody know what this image is of? Well, this image is famously called as the pale blue dot. Now, this was an image which was taken by the Voyager 1 space probe in 1990 when it was 6 billion kilometers away from the Earth. And that little spot out there is our Earth. It just went to show how insignificantly small we are in this universe. Now, there are many stars in this universe. How many? 200 billion trillion stars. You know how much that is? There's more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand on the earth. Imagine all the beaches, all those deserts, all that sand, all those grains, and yet there are more stars. And every star will have multiple planets around it. So imagine the number of planets there are out there. Yet, we have only one planet Earth. There is no planet B. I dedicate this talk to our next generation because our generation is somehow going to get by, but they are the ones who are likely to face the end of the world as we know it. And if you look at the top 5 ways in which the world can possibly end, there are wars, there's climate change, there could be pandemics again, artificial intelligence could take over, or some natural disasters. For many of these, there's not much which an individual can do. But today, we'll focus on climate change and pandemics and see how you and I can make a difference. So, what is climate change? Now, the Earth has an atmosphere, and in that atmosphere, there are certain gases known as the greenhouse gases. Now, what do these gases do? They trap the heat coming from the sun. Now, that's a good thing because that keeps the Earth warm, otherwise, it will freeze up. The problem is these greenhouse gases have now increased in amount. That's why more heat is being retained and it is causing what is known as global warming. Now, if you look at the gases, the carbon dioxide is the largest in quantity. There are two other gases, methane and nitrous oxide, which have a much higher global warming potential. What it means is a single molecule of, say, nitrous oxide will have, or rather, will retain 300 times more heat than one molecule of carbon dioxide. So these are more powerful as far as the global warming potential is concerned. And the world's been getting warmer. There are no two ways about it. The temperatures yearly basis are rising. And we look at the temperatures is around the 1950s as a baseline and call these the pre-industrialization levels. Now we are trying to see how high have we gone above those levels. And 1.5 degrees is considered to be like a cutoff. That is our target. We need to not go beyond that. And even if we do cross that, one figure that we should certainly not cross is 2 degrees, because then everything will become irreversible. And if we don't do anything and just continue the way we are living, the temperatures by 2100 are going to reach go 4.5 degrees above these levels. Now, that's a huge jump. Now, even if we follow the current policies, because the governments all over are trying to do their bit, still the temperatures are expected to rise by 3 degrees. And if the government follows all their current pledges, they've promised a lot of things, even then the temperatures will still be higher by 2.7 degrees. Now, what this tells us is that only government initiatives really cannot help us. It's you and I that we have to do something. In fact, 2023 was the world's hottest year in 100,000 years. The temperatures in the last year was 1.48 degrees above the pre-industrialization levels. In fact, in November, that month alone, it even crossed 2 degrees. So why is this global temperature so important? Because it causes the glaciers to melt. The Arctic Ocean is shrinking. By 2050, it may become ice free. And all this water that is coming out from the glaciers is making the sea levels rise. There are islands which are getting submerged and people are having to relocate. In fact, by 2050, millions will find themselves in flood zones, including cities like Mumbai and Kolkata. And that will lead to territory wars. Where will these people go? Storms and hurricanes we are seeing as continuously rising. The incidences of wildfires are increasing. Floods are increasing. Heat waves and record droughts are increasing. The billion-dollar disaster events are on the rise. Species are going extinct. The Earth has seen five mass extinctions in the past. Mass extinction is when a high number of species dies in a very short geological period. Currently, the species extinction rate is up to 10,000 times higher than natural rates. Naturally, three species are expected to die every year. Currently, three species are dying every hour. That's how bad it is. All these animals that we see on planet Earth may go extinct in the next 20 to 40 years. In fact, by 2100, 50% of the species would be in critical risk of extinction. We are, in fact, headed towards the sixth mass extinction. Past extinctions were all because of natural phenomena. Unfortunately, the current one is driven solely by human activity. Now, the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. And if you put this entire history of Earth in a 12-hour period, the humans have arrived just 2 seconds ago. And in those 2 seconds, we have driven the Earth to a mass extinction. So the question is what you and I can do about this as individuals. For that, we need to understand why is this happening. Now, when you talk of causes of climate change, the most commonly mentioned causes like electricity, manufacturing industry, mining, construction, consumerism, transportation, but these are all general things which individual can probably not do much about. But what no one talks about, one of the biggest threats to species extinction and to our ecosystem is, believe it or not, food production. Yes, food production is responsible for 80% of deforestation, 70% of freshwater usage, and is the single biggest cause of biodiversity loss. What does that mean? Do we stop eating? Thankfully, not. But we need to be smart, we need to eat smart. See, animal agriculture can either be plant agriculture, where humans grow specific crops for their direct consumption, or it could be animal agriculture, where humans grow specific animals for their direct or indirect consumption. Now, these animals grown for food are known as livestock animals, and they provide us with meat, fish, eggs, and milk. Now, I'm saying humans grow animals because they are not naturally born on this planet. They are artificially created by humans. Now, 10,000 years ago, if you look at all the mammals on the planet, let's exclude the humans for the moment, 100% were wild mammals, right? There was no livestock at that time. Humans were not growing animals at that time. Today, if you think, what would be the percentage of these wild mammals? By wild mammals, what I mean is mammals on land as well as on the earth, right? Just look at this. This is what we have done on planet Earth. 94% animals are livestock, and only 6% wild mammals are left. Even if you consider humans in the picture, and we have grown quite a bit, livestock is nearly double that of humans as well. What about the birds? We haven't spared them either. 71% are chicken. Imagine that. Okay, that's a lot of animals and birds. The question is, so what? How does that matter? Isn't it the natural order of things? Well, not really. If you look at the natural food pyramid, all are naturally born, they all live in the wild. The prey has a fair chance to escape, and the predators will die out when the prey numbers fall, which maintains a natural balance of population. And the humans were also a part of this 10,000 years ago when we used to hunt and gather food for ourselves. But then came agriculture. What that did, from whatever we could find, now we could eat whatever we wished for, right? Now we started breeding specific animals who all live in captivity. They are all artificially born and they have a zero chance of escaping. So, a natural pyramid with human as the top predator, which is supposed to look like this, what has happened is humans have grown in number. We are growing animals for our consumption. The humans are more than 8 billion in number. Every year, more than 80 billion animals are killed just on land, right? So when the top predator starts growing its own prey, what happens is the resources are that they are the same. Now they are going to shrink. So there's no balance left anymore, and the pyramid doesn't look anything like natural. But what is wrong with extra animals? That is where we talk about the environmental impact of animal agriculture. Now, the very fact that these many animals exist, they're going to occupy some amount of land. Now, if you look at the land on Earth, Earth's surface has said 29% of land, right? Rest is water. Out of this, only 71% is habitable land. Out of this habitable land, 50% land is used for agriculture. Okay, and this out of this, 77% is used for animal agriculture. Only 23 is used for plant agriculture. But sadly, from the 77% of land, the world gets only 18% of its global calories. 82% of the calories are obtained from the 23% of plant agriculture. So that's 27% of the total land mass which is used for animal agriculture. Now, in comparison, if you look at all the human infrastructure, the cities, the towns, the villages, the roads that we have built, all that accounts to just 1%. If you look on the map, that area, 27%, is equivalent to the entire North and South America, right? That's more than the entire surface area of the moon. And the agricultural land usage is only increasing year by year. Just look at this graph, and you can very well see that most of it is for animal feed and for grazing of these animals. This is an image of 1800, which shows distribution of different areas on the land. But you need to look at the pink color, the pasture. You hardly see any pink on this map. Now, if you look at the 2014 map, you just see pink is spreading everywhere. Have a look at this again. This is 1800 and this is 2014. See the amount of pasture that is spread across the world. And it's not a surprise because if you look at land needed per kg of food, you can just see that animal products require a huge amount of land, more than what plants require. In fact, if you compare the land needed to produce 1000 calories from vegetables like potatoes or wheat or rice, beef would require 160 times more. Even if you look at 1 gram of protein coming from vegetable sources, beef would require 100 times more land. And where does all this land come from? Now, the Amazon forest, the size of 3 football fields, is getting cut every single minute. And 91% of this is to provide for animal needs. No wonder animal agriculture is by far the biggest cause of deforestation. Now, deforestation is going to lead to biodiversity loss because within that small area of rainforest, there are n number of species surviving and thriving. And you cut it off, the species just vanish. Animal agriculture is indeed the leading cause of species extinction. And the endangered species list is just going on increasing year by year. So just because they exist, these animals cause land shortage, species loss, and deforestation. Now, obviously, they're going to eat and drink. How will they survive otherwise? They'll use the same food and water that humans are using. Now, humans require a lot of water, right? This is per day. But if you look at what cattle is going to require, they require 8 times more water and 6 times more food than what humans consume. And when you talk of water, we feel there's a lot of water on Earth because 71% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. But if you take this water and make a globe out of it, that's not a lot. It's only on the surface, a thin layer on the surface. Now, out of this as well, 97% of water is in the oceans, which is saline water that we can't use. Some fresh water is frozen, that's nearly 2%, is frozen in ice. Now, that ice is melting and it's going into the oceans. So, even that is not being usable. So, what is left for us as drinking water? That small amount, less than 1%, which is underground and in the lakes and rivers. Now, we have removed so much water from the planet's crust that, in fact, the Earth's axis has tilted by nearly 32 inches. How do we save water? There are many suggestions offered, right? You can put some sensors, don't use showers, turn off the tap whenever possible, do a quick shower, use high efficiency appliances, and whatnot. Doing all this, you can save 400 liters per day. That's like amazing, right? But you eat one hamburger and you have consumed 2,400 liters of water. That is the water footprint of one hamburger. Why is that so? Because if you look at an average person's water footprint, maximum water footprint is in the food that we eat, not so much in our household usage, right? In fact, the fresh water consumed per kg from meat and dairy products is way, way higher than what is required for plant foods. 1 kg of beef requires 15,000 liters of water. One person can drink that much water for 15 years. So 2,400 liters of water is equivalent to eating an hamburger or taking a shower for 2 months or flushing the toilet for 6 months. Similarly, 1,000 liters of water are required to produce 1 liter of milk. That's equivalent to 14 loads of laundry or 34 loads of dishes. And if you compare dairy milk with the alternative plant based milk, you can see that dairy is by far the worst. Compared to soy milk, it is responsible for 3 times more emissions, 10 times more water pollution, 13 times more land usage, and 22 times more water. And water is precious. 1 in 6 people have no access to fresh drinking water. Yet, the meat and dairy industry uses 1/3 of Earth's fresh water. Meat based diet uses 5 times more water than a plant based diet. And if you look at the food, when we feed 100 beans to a cow, only 6 beans will actually end up reaching the human stomach. 94% will be wasted. 1 kg of beef can feed 2 or 3 people, but for that 1 kg of beef to be produced, the animal has to be fed around 16 kgs of grain over its lifetime. These would have fed 20 to 25 people. So it is a big inefficient distribution that is happening there. And when we eat meat, there's somebody who doesn't get to eat at all. Because 82% of the world's starving children live in countries where food is fed to animals to be exported for money. Every day, 1 billion people sleep hungry. 10,000 children die of starvation, and yet 1/3 of the world's cereal harvest is fed to farmed animals. We have enough food to eliminate hunger 3 times over. We're just not giving it to the right people. So, because they eat and drink, they cause water shortage and food shortage. Now, they are also going to burp and fart, right? And whenever they do that, they release greenhouse gases. There are microbes in the stomach of these ruminant animals that break down food and release methane. And their excreta releases nitrous oxide, the two greenhouse gases that we talked about. But seriously, how bad can it get, right? Well, if you look at the carbon emissions coming from livestock, they are more than the carbon emissions of Australia, Brazil, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Spain, and UK combined, right? If you look at the nations with the highest greenhouse gas emissions, China tops the list, followed by USA. If you were to create a nation only of cows that are there on this planet, it would rank number 3. And if you include all the livestock animals, believe it or not, will be number 2 as far as greenhouse gases emissions are concerned. Well, we are told, let us save the earth, let us go green, let us switch to electric vehicles. But if you put all the modes of transportation on one side, the cars, the trucks, the trains, the ships, the aeroplanes, the emissions are still less than those coming from cows. In fact, if you account for all the overlooked, misallocated, and unaccounted emissions, then this emission accounts for 51% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. That's staggering. And that's not a surprise because if you compare meat and dairy with the plant products, again, the greenhouse gas emissions are huge as far as it is concerned. In fact, a meat diet releases 7 times more greenhouse gas emissions and consumes 11 times more fossil fuel compared to a plant based diet. And these are all toxic gases, right? They cause air pollution, leading to all kinds of respiratory illnesses and immune suppression and mood disorders. So, just because they burp and fart, they cause air pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, and hence lead to climate change. And they are also going to pee and poo, right? And that they generate waste. How much waste? 130 times more waste than what humans generate, with no waste treatment facilities available. So it causes air and water pollution. And people who live in surrounding these farms, factory farms, suffer all kinds of diseases, unfortunately. And you know how much excrement is produced? 40,000 kgs are produced per second. That's 400 billion kgs every year. That much poo is enough to cover London, New York, Paris, San Francisco, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Berlin, Delaware, Costa Rica, Denmark, Rio de Janeiro, Bali, and New Delhi. Why don't we see all this? Because it's all dumped into the oceans, which is where we come to the effect on oceans. Why is the ocean so important? I mean, we don't live there after all, do we? It produces 70% of the oxygen and absorbs 1/4 of the carbon dioxide. The phytoplankton, which are there in the oceans, do that. We give a lot of importance to the rainforest, but we have to understand that the rainforests are responsible for giving oxygen. It's less than 30%. 70% of it is coming from the oceans. Besides, it gives life to many marine creatures. Incredible biodiversity is present, and the currents in the ocean help to mitigate climate change. Now, what is happening is because of the increase in the atmospheric carbon dioxide, the pH of the ocean is getting reduced, and these phytoplanktons cannot survive and they die out. And when they die out, they can absorb even less carbon dioxide, and this ends up becoming a vicious cycle. The phytoplanktons are actually like a soup for marine animals to survive on, and when they die, it causes collapse of entire marine ecosystem. Beautiful gardens of corals and sponges are being turned to lifeless plains. These are known as dead zones, low oxygen areas where no marine life can survive. And you can see these dead zones, they're spreading across all over the oceans. And if you look at fishing, these are fishing trawlers, and you can see how they are spreading. What they do is these large nets, which are the size of 3-story buildings and as big as a football field, they go and scratch the entire surface from the ocean bed, and everything that comes in its path is just taken out, leaving absolutely lifeless oceans behind. Each year, fishing trawlers plow an area of seafloor that is twice the size of United States. And many of this is bycatch, fish which are caught completely unintentionally and just discarded. A 1 kilo of shrimp, if you want to obtain, up to 20 kilos of bycatch will be found. 160 billion kgs of sea creatures are killed every year. 100 million sharks are killed every year. 3 trillion fish are killed every year. These are huge numbers 3 trillion is a huge number. We cannot comprehend how big these numbers could be. So if you just start counting from 1 to 3 trillion, you know how much time it will take you? Few days, few months, few years. It will take you 100,000 years. That's 1,400 lifetimes. If all you do from the moment you're born till you die is just count the fish, you'll have to be reborn 1,400 times. If you start walking 3 trillion steps, it will take you 50,000 times around the earth. You'll be able to make 3,000 trips to the moon and back. Forget the moon. You'll be able to go 8 times to the sun and come back. Light takes 8 minutes to reach the earth from the sun. You can go 8 times and come back. That many fish we are killing every year. In fact, fishing boats are increasing. We are exploring newer seabeds and using higher, better, and better technology. Yet, the global catch is flatlining because there just aren't enough fish left. At this rate, we'll have fishless oceans by 2048, maybe earlier. Anybody knows what this image is of? This is known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Now, there are 5 such patches in the Pacific Ocean. This is all plastic that's thrown into the oceans, gets accumulated in these certain areas because of the oceanic currents. And this single patch is more than half the size of India. Just imagine that. 74% diet of sea turtles that live here is plastic. Because whenever they go to find food, plastic is 180 times more. How can they find food? And what are we told? Save oceans by not using plastic bags, don't use plastic straws, no plastic cups. Very good. All these are important. But what no one tells us is that 80% of plastic here is fishing gear. This, the spoiled nets are just thrown around in the ocean where marine animals get caught randomly and die. Even the birds, when they dip down to catch the fish, they also get caught and die. The nets are so huge that when they get wiped out, pushed onto the land animals also get caught and die. So because they pee and they poo, they cause ocean damage and water pollution. Just imagine this, a single industry causing so much destruction. Picture abhi baki hai mere dost. We haven't talked about pandemics yet. Now, when Corona came, we called it the China virus. But is China the only one to be blamed? All past epidemics and pandemics, if you see, have been linked to animal farming in some way or the other. Why does this happen? Because we crowd millions of animals together, we raise them in filthy conditions, and we pump them with antibiotics. 80% of all antibiotics are used on factory farm animals. Just imagine that. And these are antibiotics that are important for humans as well, not just random outdated antibiotics. Now, what happens is, even if there is one super bug that is not killed by these antibiotics, it just multiplies in these animals. And then through food, water, and soil, it enters our human system. And that is when we get zoonotic diseases, which are responsible for millions of deaths every year. In fact, 75% of emerging infectious diseases originate in animals. We are waiting for the next pandemic, which could be far more fatal than what Corona was. In fact, it said if you actually want to create global pandemics, then just build animal factory farms. That's like a sure shot way of getting a pandemic. So we have to add pandemics to the list as well. But all this seems to be a Western world problem, is what many would say, because India has a lot of vegetarian population. So let's see if we Indians are any better. Well, if you look at the meat consumption, yes, India doesn't consume as much meat as many of the other countries. But India is the number one producer and consumer of dairy. We produce nearly 1/4 of the world's milk. And cattle are the biggest culprits as far as global emissions by species wise are concerned. And lo and behold, India has nearly 1/3 of the world's cattle. As you can see, the amount of cattle in India is just going on increasing. India, no wonder, is number three in the greenhouse gas emissions. If you look at the beef cattle list, again, India is nowhere to be found in this list because India does not have beef farms. Yet, in 2014, India was the world's largest beef exporter. Since then, it's always been in the top four in spite of having no dedicated beef farms. How does that work? Where does all the cattle for export come from? 44% of world's beef comes from dairy cattle. And if you look at India, all of India's beef comes from dairy. If you support the dairy industry, you're supporting the beef industry. Why is everyone silent about all this? It's all about money. Because milk is the largest crop in India, so more than rice and wheat combined. So instead of stopping, we are in fact promoting the dairy industry. Rampant artificial insemination, injecting oxytocin to pregnant cows, separation of calves from their mothers, purposeless slaughtering of male calves. All this is happening, yet we are in denial. But statistics don't lie. If you look at the male to female distribution of cows, it's 1:3, and it's getting worse every year. If you look at buffaloes, it's 1:11 because buffaloes can be slaughtered freely in India. Cows are protected in some of the states. How do you explain this unless male calves are being slaughtered? Let me ask you a question. Who gives milk? Cows, buffaloes, goat? A mother gives milk. A cow does not give milk all her life. She gives milk only after she gives birth to a calf. So, for whom is the mother's milk for? It's for the baby, right? That's how it's supposed to be. Yet, what we do, we separate the calf from its mother, right? And what we believe that the cow is supposed to sustain the entire human race. That is what we have been made to believe. In fact, dairy is probably humans' most unnatural creation. It's so weird because humans are the only species on the planet that drink milk as adults, and that too of another species altogether. Then why is milk such a big part of our diet? It's all marketing. You'd be surprised to know that cigarettes were promoted as healthy products in the early 1950s by physicians. And from it's possible to survive on milk during times of adversity, we have now made to believe it is impossible to survive without milk. If you look at the life cycle of a dairy cow or a buffalo, this is how it is. At a very young age, they start getting artificially inseminated. As soon as the first calf is born, they are re impregnated. The second calf is born, re impregnated. The whole thing comes on. Just imagine the trauma a cow would be going through every time a mother child bond is being separated. And imagine how much resources it must be taking out of the body of a cow to keep doing this all her life. And anytime she's unable to give milk, she's sent for slaughter. Or in some states of India, left to fend for herself because slaughtering is not allowed. Cows are supposed to be protected in India, right? And this is how they end up after exploitation. And you would never find buffaloes there because buffaloes can be very well killed. And then we get stories like this or this 5 million abandoned cows in India. Sadly, cow is respected in India, called as a mother. Do we ever stop to think what is the cost of this milk? Dairy is as bad as the meat industry, and India is a big part of it. So, to summarize, animal agriculture is a clear and present danger. 9 lakh cows are slaughtered every single day. If you just make a line of these cows, make them stand one behind the other, you know how long that line would be? It'll extend from Bengaluru to Jaipur. One single day, that many cows are being slaughtered. 1,40,000 chickens are slaughtered every minute. and 1 lakh fish are slaughtered every second. If you look at the normal lifespan of a chicken, it's around 8 to 10 years. But the chicken that is eaten, the age when it's killed? Just 1.5 months. That's it. In fact, all the animals that are consumed, if you look at the natural lifespan and look at the slaughter age, you'll be surprised to know that we are basically eating babies. And meat and milk demand is likely to double by 2050. Imagine how worse this is going to get. If we maintain our current food demands by 2030, we will need resources of 2 Earths, but we have only one. Yet, all is not lost. There is still hope. We have been taught refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle. But that's not enough. We need to do more. What could be the solution? Renewable energy? Well, yes, solar and wind generators. We would see an impact in 20 years' time, and the estimated cost is $43 trillion. Or we could shift to a plant based diet. Just stop eating meat and dairy. The impact seen would be immediate and the cost zero. By adopting a plant based diet, a single person in a single day can save an animal's life 20 kgs of grain, 9 kgs of carbon dioxide emissions, 30 square feet of forest, 4,200 liters of water, and probably add 3.5 hours of life because of living healthy. A diet change is, in fact, the single biggest way to reduce our impact on the planet. It's far bigger than cutting down flights or buying an electric car. Now, I have been for 5 years on plant-based diet, which means I have saved enough water to feed 10,000 people for a year, enough grains to feed 200 people for a year, forests the size of 20 tennis courts, and emissions equivalent to a car driven for 125,000 kilometers. Saved over 400 animal lives and probably added a few months to my own life. That is the power of single person. And I've got some personal benefits as well. I've improved a lot on my health. Even my blood parameters have become better. And I've been able to do things which previously I was not able to do. In fact, the world's top sportsmen are choosing plant based diets. And this is not something new. Since years, this has been done and followed. And this is true for all fields of sports. In fact, even bodybuilders are there on whole food plant based diets. But let me give you a disclaimer. Muscles are built in the gym, not in the kitchen. So don't think by just changing your diet you're going to become muscular. No, you will have to work out. But the point is, a plant based diet is not going to restrict that in any way. If you look at the position of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, it's clearly stated that vegan diets are nutritionally adequate, provide health benefits, they are appropriate for all stages of the life cycle, and they are more environmentally sustainable. What more do we want? No wonder physicians and dietitians all over the world are practicing a whole food plant based diet. So, to conclude, if we wish to save the future of our children, we must adopt a plant based diet. It's simple, it's substantial, and it is spiritually uplifting. There's just one small hurdle. You know what? Our taste buds. We no longer eat to live, we now live to eat. The question is, are we also willing to die to eat? Because honestly, we are eating our way to extinction now. But we don't need to. Even there are amazing, tasty options on a plant based diet. And this is not something we are talking of that's far away in the future. Oh, this is closer than we think. The effects will be felt by 2050. The future of our children is in our hands. We owe it to them to leave our planet in a better state than when we found it. Because today we have a choice. Tomorrow they may not. Ours is the first generation to have understood the value of nature and our impact on it. And we may also be the last generation that can act to stop it. And what we are not changing, we are actually choosing. So, by not changing what's on your plate, from animal foods to plant based foods, then we are actually choosing the chicken industry, the mutton industry, the pork industry, the beef industry, the fish industry, the egg industry, the dairy industry, and all that comes along with it. Taste prevents us from seeing the pain of our fellow creatures. And these are animals that we love. We connect with them, we like them. But when they come on our plate, everything is forgotten. It's all taste. What is the difference, right? I mean, come on, what is the difference? Yet we are told that one has to be eaten, the other has to be petted. The only difference is our own perception. They are all live sentient beings. So we need to really ask ourselves, does our heart agree with a diet that depends on such practices? Does our mind agree with a diet that is causing our own extinction? You always have a choice. So you can choose to either hug or hang, tickle or torture them, snuggle them or slaughter them, kiss them or kill them. What would you choose? The only thing we need from animals is their forgiveness. We are what we eat. Then let us eat the rainbow, not the morgue. Let us choose wisely. Because in the end, that's all we have, a pale blue dot in this universe. There is no planet B. Let's eat like we live here. Thank you so much.